During a surveillance operation in the Sumy region, the 3rd Air Assault Battalion, part of Ukraine's 79th Air Assault Brigade, detects Russian armored elements. Upon receiving information that Russian forces are approaching the area, Ukrainian troops act without delay. At the same time, Russian armored units continue their advance, while opening suppressive fire on Ukrainian positions, attempting to break through the defense lines. As tension rises along the front, Ukrainian drone operators, having received authorization from the command center, quickly switch to attack mode. At that very moment, one of the Russian tanks strikes a hidden landmine. A massive explosion. The Russian tank is destroyed. 2 Russian soldiers who manage to survive the blast emerge from the smoke and try to retreat rapidly from the area. However, the top priority for the Ukrainian drone operators is to ensure the heavily damaged Russian tank is completely neutralized. Meanwhile, other Russian tanks continue to advance despite the heavy fire, maintaining pressure on the defensive positions. The Ukrainian drone operators calmly identify targets one by one and keep carrying out precise strikes. Suddenly, another accurate FPV drone strike hits its mark. A new explosion. Another Russian tank is destroyed. Smoke and dust clouds engulf the area, disrupting the advance of Russian forces. At the same time, at another point along the front line, a Russian Turtle tank, equipped with additional armor plating, is detected. Although these tanks are modified to provide extra protection against drone attacks, they become an easy target when moving alongside other armored vehicles. Ukrainian drone operators waste no time seizing this opportunity. Attack drones take off one after another and lock onto their targets. Successive precision strikes slow down the Russian armored convoy. As the echoes of the explosion spread through the area, Ukrainian troops intensify the pressure. Ultimately, despite its heavy armor, the Turtle tank cannot withstand the relentless attacks. A precise hit pierces the tank's armor, rendering it inoperable. As a result, the Russian armored presence in the Sumy region is forced to withdraw, suffering heavy losses. The so-called Turtle tanks, recently deployed by the Russian army to the front lines, are actually one of the clearest signs of the helplessness and technological backwardness of Russian armored forces. These tanks are usually old Soviet models, like the T-62 or T-72 hulls, hastily reinforced in workshops with thick steel plates and metal beams crudely welded on top. Visually resembling a giant metal box, these tanks are intended to provide protection against Ukrainian drone strikes. However, in reality, these clumsy armor additions do not make the tanks safer. Instead, they deprive them of mobility, visibility, and effective firepower. For Ukrainian drone operators, these turtles are essentially easy targets. The thick coverings on top cannot prevent FPV drones or artillery strikes from hitting weak points. Moreover, the added weight puts extra strain on the tank's engines, often causing them to break down or become immobilized in muddy steppes or narrow trench lines. While Russian propaganda tries to present these turtle tanks as a solution to drones, on the battlefield they expose nothing but the desperation of Russian commanders and their lack of modern armor or active protection systems. Thanks to the Ukrainian Army's well-trained drone teams and precise intelligence network, these lumbering metal boxes are usually destroyed or abandoned before they can even reach the front. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia, which began in 2014 and escalated dramatically with the large-scale invasion in 2022, has become one of the most complex land wars of the modern era. Over the past 2 years, Ukraine's ability to repel Russian armored convoys has emerged as one of the decisive factors shaping the course of the war. The Russian military heavily relies on long columns of armored and motorized units to transport troops, ammunition, and essential supplies across vast territories and deep into the front lines. However, Ukraine has developed an effective strategy combining classic ground defense with modern drone warfare to neutralize these convoys. The most intense fighting has been concentrated in regions like Donbas, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and the Kherson front line. The Donbas region is of critical importance due to its rich coal reserves, industrial facilities, and strategic infrastructure. By securing full control of this area, Russia aims to gain a significant strategic advantage and sever Ukraine's industrial lifeline. Yet, the Ukrainian forces have turned the region's narrow roads, village crossings, and dense industrial zones into defensive strongholds. Minefields, anti-tank trenches, and well-prepared ambush sites trap Russian convoys like pieces on a chessboard. Another crucial front is Zaporizhzhia, often seen as the key to the southern theater. This region connects supply routes to the Black Sea and Crimea. Russia seeks to strengthen its land corridor from south to north through Zaporizhzhia, but Ukraine constantly conducts drone reconnaissance flights here. By tracking convoy movements at night and launching precise strikes at dawn or midnight, Ukrainian forces target armored vehicles, fuel tankers, and bridge crossings, repeatedly severing Russia's supply chains and forcing its units to reorganize under pressure. One of the main weapons in these operations is Ukraine's extensive use of drones. FPV drones, first-person view kamikaze drones controlled live by an operator, have become the nightmare of Russian convoys. These drones strike tanks, armored personnel carriers, or supply trucks, often hitting their engines, turrets, or fuel tanks. A single drone costing just a few $1,000s can destroy or disable a multi-million-dollar armored vehicle. This makes Ukraine's limited defense resources remarkably effective. Beyond logistics, the human factor has been equally decisive. Russian units often advance in long convoys believing the rear is secure. Yet Ukrainian forces operate in small mobile groups that penetrate behind these convoys, cut communication lines, and provide real-time targeting for drone operators. In some regions, roads are booby-trapped overnight, bridges rigged with explosives, or hidden mines are planted to ambush the convoys at their most vulnerable points, crippling Russian plans for fast, deep advances. Supporting these tactics, Western-supplied advanced anti-tank weapons and portable air defense systems have strengthened Ukraine's flexible defensive lines. Javelin missiles, in particular, have become the bane of Russian armor. To counter this, Russian forces often use heavy artillery to clear the way for convoys in advance. However, Ukraine's mobile defense strategy reduces the effectiveness of these bombardments by frequently changing positions and setting traps along expected convoy routes. Another crucial dimension of this conflict is psychological warfare. Ukraine frequently shares footage of successful strikes on Russian convoys with its people and the international community. These videos, often captured by drones, demoralize Russian troops while boosting Ukrainian morale and sustaining public support. They also strengthen Western resolve to continue supplying Ukraine with weapons and intelligence. While Russia tries to hide these losses, the reality of the modern information age makes it nearly impossible to fully contain the truth. Combining all these elements paints a complex picture. This is not just a war of tanks, artillery, and aircraft. It's also a battle of real-time intelligence, satellite imagery, cyber operations, and psychological influence. Front lines shift unpredictably, from a village in Donbas to a crossroads in Zaporizhzhia. Both sides constantly adapt their methods. Russian forces have started covering their tanks with cage armor or metal mesh to shield them from drone strikes, while Ukrainian operators develop new payloads and tactics to penetrate these makeshift defenses. Looking ahead, the security of supply lines, the mobility of armored convoys, and the effectiveness of drone operations will likely remain decisive in shaping the outcome of this war. Russia still depends on large convoys to sustain and reinforce its widely spread units. But each convoy destroyed or forced to retreat tips the balance further in Ukraine's favor. Every successful strike is not only a military blow, but also a strategic and psychological setback for Russian forces. In the end, Ukraine's success in repelling Russian convoy attacks demonstrates how quickly modern warfare can evolve and how new technologies can neutralize traditional battlefield advantages. This conflict has already cemented itself as a living example in military history of how drones, precision strikes, and real-time intelligence will shape the future of warfare.